Turn to Genesis chapter 44. Genesis chapter 44. And we are in the middle of a really interesting story. I don't know about you, but I find this to be really interesting. Even though I'm already familiar with it, I know what the outcome is going to be, and I'm sure you all do as well. But it is one of the more interesting stories in the Bible, I think, especially because of all the details and what happens at the end and the surprises and everything. I mean, it would make a good plot for a movie. And of course, they have done a biblical movie on it, kind of like the Ten Commandments and all of that, like they do those series. Those are kind of, some of those, the productions are kind of amateurish. But, if they had a up-to-date, good motion picture with the technology they have today, and as long as it was biblical and clean and they didn't have to mess it up like they mostly do, it's a really good plot. It really is. Now, up until now, we have seen that Jacob sent his sons to go to Egypt because of the famine. They go to get food. They encounter Joseph. Joseph recognizes them. Joseph knows that they are his brothers. They don't know that it is Joseph, and for good reason. There's no reason why they would expect it to be Joseph. There's no good reason why they would even recognize it as being Joseph. And Joseph, knowing that it's them, he's going to play with them a little bit. And Joseph, a lot, and it's going to continue today. And Joseph accuses them of being spies. And they're scared, and they have to convince him as best they can that they're not spies, that they are who they are claiming to be. And he inquires, since he knows who they are, he inquires about the family. Naturally, he inquires about his father. He wants to know, how is your father? Is your father still alive? Do you have any brothers? And they said, yes, our father is still alive. Said, yes, we have another younger brother, Benjamin. And they said, we have another younger brother who is not. They didn't elaborate or expound on what exactly that meant, and he didn't ask them because he already knows. But he tells them, okay, I want to see your other brother, Benjamin. And he's going to say, just to prove that you guys are not spies, so you guys can prove yourself and to make sure that you're not lying, I'm going to keep one of you guys here while you guys leave and then come back and bring Benjamin. Now, who did he keep? Simeon. He kept Simeon as a hostage. He gives them food, puts money in their sacks, makes them look bad in their eyes. They go down to their father Jacob, and they return without Simeon. Now Jacob is worried, and they tell him the story about, this guy, Pharaoh's right-hand man, he accused us of being spies. He kept Simeon. He said that we can't return to get Simeon without Benjamin. And now Jacob is freaking out. Jacob already thinks in his mind that Joseph is dead. Jacob now sees that Simeon is possibly never going to return. He might be kept in Egypt and made into a slave or something. And he's thinking, man, I already lost one son for sure. Now I halfway lost another son. Simeon is back in Egypt. And you guys want to take Benjamin, the youngest boy, you want to take him into Egypt too? No way. I'm not having it. Joseph's already dead. Simeon is kept in Egypt. If I let you take Benjamin, then what happens if Benjamin gets killed or they keep him? And why did he have such an affinity for Benjamin? What was so special about Benjamin?
He was his youngest from Rachel.
Yeah, he was the only full brother of Joseph. All the others were half brothers. All the others were from Leah or the handmaids. And so Rachel only had two boys of her own, Joseph and Benjamin. And Jacob is thinking, no, I'm not going to let you take Benjamin. There's too much of a risk. If I leave him, that's it. I'm finished. I'll just die of a broken heart. Well, the famine continues. And Jacob gets a little more desperate because they're running out of food. So the only recourse they have is going back to Egypt for more food. And the brothers finally convinced Jacob to let them take Benjamin with them back to Egypt, because that's the only way they can go back to Egypt and come back and return to their dad, especially getting Simeon, because Joseph said, you don't come back without Benjamin. Now, why did Joseph say that? Because he wants to see his brother. Yeah. So we're going to pick it up in chapter 44. Now remember, look at chapter 33, verse 34. When they were there, he fed them. They actually sat in his palace or in his chamber or wherever at their own table, and he actually fed them a meal. And he gave Benjamin 5 times as much. See, Jacob actually gave in, and he let them take Benjamin. And when Benjamin went with all the other brothers, and he saw Benjamin, we saw that Joseph cried and all of that. He was overcome with emotion. In verse 34 of chapter 43, it says he gave Benjamin 5 times as much food as the other brothers. And some people say he may have been testing the other brothers to see if they would get jealous. Because remember, they were jealous of Joseph. He may have been testing them to see, I wonder, now that I've been out of the picture all these years, I wonder if they still have that same resentment toward the younger brother like they did toward me. And if they did, he may have not have been so merciful to them. That's a possibility. All right, look at chapter 44, verse 1. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth. So what's going on now is they're going to return back to Canaan, back to their father Jacob. They've come the second time for food. They did what Joseph instructed them to do by bringing Benjamin back with them so he could see Benjamin. And now he's giving them food, and he's going to send them on their way. But remember the first time he put the money with the food, with the grain, or with the corn in their sacks? To kind of a trick to make them look bad, kind of setting them up. He's going to do something similar again. Look at verse 2. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest. Who would that be? Benjamin. And his corn money. So now it's not just the money, but this silver cup that is very significant. It's Joseph's silver cup. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, up, follow after the men. And when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good? Is not this in it in which my Lord drinketh, and whereby indeed he divineth? Ye have done evil in so doing. So he tells his servants, okay, guys, they've gone a little bit. I want you to go, and I want you to chase after them. Kind of like the police, all right? Go get them. Go catch them. And that cup that I told you to put in the sack with his money and with the grain, see, he doesn't know it's in there. It's a trick. It's hidden. I want you to go in there. It's entrapment is what it is. You know, sometimes the police, you know what they caught recently? They caught the police. There was this video, and they showed this cop planting a bag of drugs somewhere in some neighborhood, and then they went and they caught this guy and arrested him, and they charged him with those drugs, and they said, you hid this or you threw it, and the cop didn't even know that his body cam was on, and they caught the cop. Yeah, these body cams that they have now, it's good. It serves a twofold purpose. It can either protect the police from false accusations of police brutality. Well, you did this, and they run the camera, and it says, no, the cop didn't do that. You did it. You were banging your head in the back of the police car. The cop didn't punch you. You punched yourself against the wall or something. And so it can work both ways. It can protect the police, or it can incriminate the police. And they showed this cop planting a bag of drugs somewhere in the neighborhood and then charging this guy that they arrested. And he forgot that it was on. And those guys, they can't go back and erase it. It's becoming a big deal. And it's a good thing, transparency. And so these guys, Joseph is telling his servant or his steward to basically frame Benjamin, frame the brothers, plant some evidence in there. And he's not guilty. You planted the evidence in there, and now you're going to charge him and hold him guilty for stealing it. That's what's going on. So if you look at verse 5, here's what they put in there. They put in there Joseph's, this cup, this silver cup. Now what's interesting is, it says in verse 5, when the guy goes and he catches him, he says, "Is not this it in which my Lord drinketh?" Okay. So he has a lot of people have their favorite glass, their favorite cup, their favorite, bowl or something. And this was probably significant because of Joseph's status. It was probably some real precious silver cup with some jewels and things in it. You ever seen these movies where they find this buried treasure and they open it up and there's these guys are on some deserted island. They're all just, we're rich, gold coins and pearl necklaces and all of these things. And sometimes you'll find like this silver cup in there that's decorated and adorned with all these jewels and things. And that's probably what it was. But here's what's interesting. It says he drinks out of it, and whereby indeed he divineth. Divine, telling the future. But why would Joseph need something like that to divine? Now here's what else is interesting. Turn to Deuteronomy chapter 18. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 10. Now we know Deuteronomy hadn't been written yet, but as we have seen, a lot of these things in Genesis will parallel or have similarities to the written law of Moses later on. And so a lot of these things were already morally wrong or customarily wrong, or there was something about it that was wrong, and then it's explicitly written down and elaborated upon once God has Moses write the law. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 10. "There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire." Okay, so that would be a human sacrifice to those gods like Molech and Milcom and those things, causing their children to be an offering, a burnt offering to those gods. Or that useth what? Divination. Or an observer of times, like astrology, things like that, the occult. Or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. It's talking about people communicating with the dead, sorcery, trying to predict the future, these prognosticators, these the occultic arts and things like that, wizardry, witchcraft, those things. Kind of like how Pharaoh had magicians and Pharaoh's wise men who he called upon to interpret his dream. And we saw the same thing in the book of Daniel with those kings, Nebuchadnezzar and guys like that. They also had these magicians, these astrologers and wizards and things. So those pagan religions practiced witchcraft and occult. It was hand in hand with their idolatry and their false religion. And one of the things in here is divination. So go back to Genesis chapter 44. Why would Joseph have this cup to practice divination? Go back to Genesis chapter 44 and let's look over to verse 15. Because you could say, well, this is not Joseph talking in verse 5. Who's speaking? The steward, right? In verse 5, because look at verse 4. Well, Joseph is telling the steward to say this. Go back to verse 4. And when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward. Okay, so Joseph commands him, up, follow after the men, and when thou dost overtake them, say unto them. So Joseph is saying, here's what you say to him. Wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good? Is not this it in which my Lord divineth? So Joseph is telling the steward, here's what you tell them and accuse them of doing. And somebody might say, well, maybe he doesn't really use it for divining. He's just telling them, just to make the charges and so the severity of the situation seem greater. Doesn't mean that he actually does it himself, though. He just wants them to think that he does it, because they still don't know it's Joseph. They think it's just your regular Egyptian ruler who's going to be involved in this type of activity. Go to verse 15. Now we see Joseph actually speaking. And Joseph said unto them, what deed is this that ye have done? Wot ye not? I mean, didn't you know? Don't you know that such a man as I can certainly divine? Well, he's not saying that he uses the cup to divine here, but the Bible in Deuteronomy forbids divination. So what's the answer? Is Joseph guilty of practicing witchcraft and divination? I wouldn't say that. Now here's the interpretations or explanations or possibilities. Okay? Number one, I already gave you the first one. The first one is he doesn't practice divination. He is just using that as one of the charges against his brothers, making them think that this is a pagan ruler who uses this cup for divination, meaning what you stole is not just something that I drink water out of, okay? This thing is a lot more valuable and more serious. This thing is actually a piece that I use for divining. Now, what I have read is that these ancient rulers, these guys did have this special cup that they would use for divination. Not that it was accurate, because we know that in the occult and things, they are not always accurate. But I have read, historically speaking, whether it's true or not, I have read that historically speaking, this was something that was common. That these pagan rulers would have some sort of chalice or cup or something that they would use in their divination. How exactly they used it in their divination, I'm not sure. But that's one explanation, is he's just making them think that it was used for divination, but Joseph was not doing it because he believes in God, not paganism. Number two, some people say that Joseph did use this cup for divination, but not in the way that the pagans used it. He used it in the sense that it was from God, and God used this as a vehicle for the divination. And they say it's kind of like how God used other objects sometimes, such as the Urim and the Thummim, or casting lots. And we do know that that part is true. The breastplate of the high priest had these stones, Urim and Thummim, which literally means in Hebrew lights and perfection, which conveys the idea, or at least the possibility, that these certain stones, these precious stones, different colors with these different Hebrew names and letters on them, would light up somehow, giving the answer to the high priest or whoever was using it when they were inquiring of God about a certain decision. And that's how God would answer them. The Urim and the Thummim. Another example is we do see in the Bible that sometimes God told people, or people would cast lots. And the decision was determined based upon the result of casting lots, kind of like throwing dice. Not gambling, but they would inquire of God of something, and sometimes that's the vehicle that God used in order to answer them by casting lots. So some people would say, perhaps Joseph used this cup in a similar manner as casting lots in the Urim and the Thummim. It's just speculation, though. We can't say for sure. I don't know if that's true or not. It doesn't seem like he would need to, though, because before Joseph ever was exalted this position, God didn't use any type of physical object in order to enhance Joseph's abilities to interpret dreams, right? Joseph interpreted 4 different dreams. 1 of the baker, 1 of the butler, and 2 of Pharaoh, without using any type of device to do it. And we don't see where Daniel and other people needed to use these objects in order to interpret dreams and interpret the writing on the wall and things like that. So I think that he's just using that as a way to cause his brothers to feel more guilty and more scared, and just throwing that out there. Not that he actually used it or needed to use it. I could be wrong, but that's my opinion on that. Verse number 6. And he overtook them, and he spake unto them these same words. And they said unto him, Wherefore saith my Lord these words? God forbid that thy servants should do according to this thing. See, so these guys don't know that it's in the sack. They're being falsely accused. They're saying, I can't believe you guys. What are you going to, after we're helping you and we're giving you this food and you came to us and all of these things, we're doing you this great favor, and then you have the nerve to steal Joseph's cup, this great cup, the king's cup that he uses for divining? Now, they don't know that it's been planted. So they are pleading innocent. They're saying, are you kidding? We didn't do that. You guys are crazy. You're out of your mind. There's no way we would do that. What are you talking about? How can you accuse us of doing such a thing? We would never even think of doing something like that. Verse 8, Behold, the money which we found in our sacks' mouths, we brought again unto thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of thy Lord's house silver or gold? They're saying the first time that they mistakenly put our money in the sack with the food that we were supposed to give them for food, we came and returned it. You ever found somebody's wallet with or purse with a lot of money in it, and then it's returned to you, or you return it to somebody with all the money in it? You ever had somebody return a wallet to you with the money or without the money? Without the money, usually, right? Yeah. Usually it's not returned. Usually the money's taken, the credit cards sometimes are used or something, and it's tossed in the trash. Okay? These guys are saying, what do you take us for? Why do you think that we would have the nerve to do something when we returned all that money back to you that was mistakenly placed in our sacks? Verse 9. With whomsoever of thy servants it be found, both let him die, and we also will be thy Lord's bondmen. They say, I'll tell you what, we are so convinced that we did not do this, that if you find that cup in somebody's grain sack, not that they even need permission, but they're saying, we approve of you killing that person, and the rest of us you can keep as slaves. How about that? We won't even beg for mercy. Verse 10, and he said, Now also let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless. Then they speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, and opened every man's sack. And he searched, and began at the eldest, and left at the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. I wonder what the brothers were thinking. They're probably thinking, what? Benjamin? You stupid idiot! You little thief! Are you out of your mind? Now look what trouble we're in. And they're thinking, oh my gosh, what did Dad tell us before we left? about Benjamin. He didn't want us to take Benjamin. Oh my gosh, we have had it now. We are, oh man.
We're really in trouble.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a greater fear.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And notice these things that are happening, and they didn't do anything wrong in this scenario. They're being falsely accused. They're being thrown in jail. Notice Joseph is letting them get a little bit of a taste of their own medicine. Notice Joseph, because when they sold Joseph, and then he was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife, and he was thrown in jail, all because of his brothers. And now he's saying, okay, guys, your turn. Let's see how you like it. Let's see how it feels. And don't you know, I mean, humanly speaking, I know that Joseph knew that God was in control, but humanly speaking, he could have feared for his life, because he would. What happened to the baker that was in jail? Executed. Joseph could have been down there, and he could have been thinking, man, any day my number's up. They're going to kill me because of those accusations from Potiphar's wife. And he wasn't even Egyptian. He's just a Hebrew. Verse 12. It was found in Benjamin's sack. Verse 13. Then they rent their clothes. It's a Hebrew customary expression of grief. They rent their clothes and laid at every man his ass and returned to the city. And Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell before him on the ground. Now they're going to be begging. They are scared for their lives. They're going to be begging for mercy. Notice now, this is another fulfillment of Joseph's dream. When he dreamed that his brothers were going to bow down and pay homage and obeisance to him. It's another fulfillment. Verse 15. And Joseph said unto them, what deed is this that ye have done? Wot ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine? Don't you guys know that I would be able to figure this out? Don't you know that I can see into the future? Don't you know the power that I have? That if you did this, that you would be caught because I know that you did it? You can't pull the wool over my eyes. You can't get away with anything. Don't you know what kind of person I am and the abilities I have? Verse 16. And Judah said, what shall we say unto my Lord? Now, by the way, in verse 15, what such a man as I can certainly divine. Did Joseph divine? Did he realize they stole the cup by divining, by divination? No. He planned it all along. He instructed it. Yeah. So he's kind of just going along with it and just tricking them. Okay. Verse 16. And Judah said, what shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also with whom the cup is found. Verse 17. And he said, God forbid that I should do so, but the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, get you up in peace unto your father. Ooh. Yeah. They have to go back to their father without Benjamin, and that's the exact thing that Jacob feared, is that something would happen to Benjamin. And now, they have to go back and give that news to their dad. What are they thinking? Oh my gosh. You ever had to tell your parents some terrible news and you knew they were going to be upset? You ever did something really, really bad and you have to tell your dad or your parents something? You ever wrecked the car? I was borrowing my dad's truck one time when I was in high school, and my parents had allowed me to spend the night at my friend's house. We had gone to this party, And where I parked the car, it was kind of in the grass off the road, but it was perpendicular to where other people would pull out and stuff. Late at night, well, when we came out of this party, out of the house, my friend and I came to the truck and noticed that somebody had backed into the passenger door, just ruined the door, put a huge dent in it, and left. Probably drunk at late night after this party. And I was thinking to myself, how in the world am I going to explain this to my dad? And I went back to my friend's house where I was spending the night, and I didn't sleep at all. Lying there all night thinking, how am I going to say this? How's my dad going to react? Oh, man. And they're thinking, how in the world is Dad going to react when we come back without Benjamin after all that he said to us? And Joseph knows this, and Joseph has a plan. Joseph sees the end, and he's playing with them and letting them sweat it out and making them feel scared and the whole bit. And rightly so, they deserve it. They deserve every bit of it. Verse 17. And he said, God forbid that I should do so, but the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, get ye up in peace unto your father. Then Judah came near unto him and said, O my Lord, let thy servants, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not thine anger burn against thy servant, for thou art even as Pharaoh. Please, let, he refers to himself as his servant, being very humble. It's like somebody before, Your Honor, Your Honor, may I have permission? Could you please consider granting me permission to approach the bench, please, Your Honor? May I, please, almost crawling on your hands and knees. Please, let me ask you something, please. My Lord, you are as great as Pharaoh. We understand that. We acknowledge that. We are at your mercy. Verse 19. My Lord asked his servants, saying, have you a father or a brother? So they're recounting that experience when they went the first time. Saying, do you remember when you asked us about our father and our brother? And we said in verse 20, and we said unto my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one, referring to Benjamin. And his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. Did they say he was dead the first time? They did not. Go back to 42. Go back to chapter 42. Go back to chapter 42. Look at verse 13. Here's the experience they're recounting. And they said, thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, and behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. They didn't say he was dead. They said one is not.
They didn't know he was dead.
Well, they still don't know he's
He
dead.
wasn't dead. They thought he was somewhere else.
Right. Now they're saying that he's dead. Well, why would they think he's dead? If they sold him into slavery, they wouldn't have any reason to think he's dead. You know what that means? That means they're still lying.
Yes.
They lied to their father. Is this Joseph's coat? We can't tell for sure. You would know better than we would. We found it in the field and there's blood on it. Well, they're lying. And they're lying to lead their dad to believe that Joseph is dead. And now they're telling Joseph that Joseph is dead.
How many years to it?
Probably got a kick out of that.
Yeah, but even if they sold him into slavery, they would have no reason to presume that he's dead. They would think that he's a slave somewhere in Egypt. But look what they say. And his brother is dead. Now, here's why I think they're saying this. Because they're trying to persuade Joseph to let them go back to their dad, because they want him to think, our dad will be so grieved because one of his sons already died. And if Benjamin doesn't get to go back to his dad, it's just going to kill him. He's just going to he'll die of a broken heart. But they're still lying. Dishonest, even in this situation. Verse 21, and thou sayest unto thy servants, bring him down unto me, that I may set mine eyes upon him. They're reminding him, you told us to bring Benjamin to you so you could see him. Verse 22, and we said unto my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. And thou sayest unto thy servants, except your youngest brother come down with you, ye shall see my face no more. Verse 24, and it came to pass when we came up unto thy servant, my father. Now he's calling Jacob Joseph's servant. He says, thy servant, my father. We told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, go again and buy us a little food. And we said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother be with us, then we will go down, for we may not see the man's face, except our youngest brother be with us. And thy servant, my father, said unto us, ye know that my wife bare me two sons. Which wife is he talking about? Rachel. Benjamin and Joseph. Verse 28, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn in pieces, talking about Joseph. And I saw him not since. And if ye take this also from me, and mischief befall him, ye shall bring me down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass, when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that we will die. And thy servant shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. Notice he said in verse 31, it shall come to pass, when he seeth that the lad is not with us, he will die. Did I say we? Okay, I thought that didn't sound correct. That he will die. And thy servant shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, if I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. So Judah saying, how about this? Let me stay here, and I'll be a slave to you, and you can let Benjamin go back down for our father's sake. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father? Who is the one who is pleading with Joseph here? Who is the one whose idea was it to sell Joseph? No, Reuben wanted to save him. It was Judah. Look, go back. Go back to chapter 37. Verse 26, 37:26. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother or and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. It was Judah's idea to sell him. And now,
Reuben was the one that came back and he was gone.
yeah, Reuben, the older brother, is the one who was upset that they sold him. Reuben wanted to deliver him. See, look at verse 21. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. See, first they wanted to kill him. Look at verse 20. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. and we will say some evil. They wanted to kill him at first. Can you imagine that? Your own brothers want to kill you? And look at the mercy that Joseph extends to his brothers. Verse 21, and Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that might rid them out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. Reuben actually wanted to
bring him back.
Rescue him. Yeah. And so they're in that pit, and Judah says, I'll tell you what, if we kill him, what profit is that? We'll get rid of him. That's what we want to do. But how about this? Let's kill two birds with one stone. Let's get rid of him and make some money out of it. Let's sell him as a slave to these traveling merchants. So Judah was pretty wicked in that scheme. And now he's pleading for his younger brother Benjamin. That might be one of the reasons why Joseph extends mercy to them, because he sees, you know what? They want to protect their younger brother and their father. Maybe they've had somewhat of a change of heart through the years. And Joseph is thinking, we know the story. He says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Joseph, look at the position that he's in. He's in a much better position than he was as a shepherd boy. Now he is a ruler of Egypt. He's saving Egypt. He's saving his family, the land of Canaan, through the famine. God has used him. He sees all that. And he's thinking, Romans 8:28, this thing worked out to my advantage. So I shouldn't really hold this bitterness and this grudge. It's been over 20 years. And now look. Now I have these guys, they're scared to death, and look how much they love their father and they love their little brother. Maybe they do have some redeeming qualities. But I still need to teach them a lesson.
He's still going to mess with him.
That's right. That's right. So Joseph is seeing all this. He's saying, okay, but I'm going to have a little fun first.
I thought this was part of Joseph's purpose, was to test his brothers. Especially, to test them to see what kind of, how they
He
would
hadn't seen him
react.
in 20 years.
Yeah.
To see what kind of men they have.
Right. See what kind of character they have.
Anything to save their brother.
Yeah. That's the thinking about why he gave Benjamin 5 times as much. Most people will say, well, he wants to see their reaction, see if they're going to get jealous, see if they're just as envious of Benjamin as they were of him. And if there's still the same rotten guys, then he might, the result would probably be different. Although he still cares about his father and Benjamin, but he might have done who knows what with his other brothers. But he's seeing that they're being honest and they're protective of Benjamin and all of that. So they're begging for mercy. And Joseph has a tender heart because of all these things that have happened. Okay, so we'll continue the next chapter, and it gets really good, especially when he's going to reveal his identity to his brothers. That's really interesting stuff there. Let's dismiss in prayer. Lord, thank you again for the Word of God and these lessons you have for us with these stories of these lives and experiences in your Word. In Jesus' name, amen.